It was indeed a summer of extremes, of weather extremes, and so many records were broken in Europe, but also globally. I mean, many countries have experienced the hottest temperature ever, both in Northern Europe and in Southern Europe. And actually in Sicily, in Italy, 49 degrees were measured. That's the hottest temperature ever measured in Europe. And also at the global level, July was the warmest month ever on the Earth. This summer was the warmest summer in Europe, and even on the top of the Greenland ice sheet, we had rain for the first time. That was never experienced before.
It is a threat. I mean, we have a list of there's a lot of known invasive alien species, and they're collected. There's a regulation from the European Commission to do this, and the agency collects information on those. But of course, then there's other ones that are a bit unknown. So we know this is a threat. We know not a lot of the routes to how they get into Europe, into our waters, into our rivers, onto our land. A lot of them have brought in for cosmetic purposes. They look nice and they're attractive. But what it does mean, aside from maybe unsightly or sightly, depending on perspective, it does push things that are already stressed. As Hans Martin said about this, stressed environment, it pushes things a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And as I said, we're at this kind of tipping point, and it's already under stress, out of equilibrium, and these invasive alien species, they push things. But it also means that some of them, they're not adapted for the European conditions. We see some tree species are planted for either commercial purposes or for aesthetic purposes, and they're not suited to the landscapes that they exist in. They either burn too quickly, they burn with too much of the intensity. They cause the ground to be more acidic, which causes other problems. We had a case in Ireland where you had a lot of coniferous woodland being planted on bogs, and actually had a negative carbon effect. It took
so instead of capturing
carbon, it actually released more, and then it led to damage to the wetlands, which led to, after a cloudburst, landslides, pollution.
Well, obviously, I also have to mention some products of our agency first. We have a number of reports which you can find on the website if you look on the climate change adaptation. Also last year we published a so-called story map on climate change impacts in Europe, which was a step in becoming more interactive, where you can actually explore how certain things like extreme rain has changed in your area. If you're interested in data, I can recommend the European Climate Data Explorer. There we collaborate together with the Copernicus Climate Change Service to bring high quality climate data to the end user. And also the Climate Adapt platform in general is kind of the first stop shop for adaptation information in Europe.
Yeah, there's a lot of information. It's just a question of finding it.
And maybe just to say also, of course, beyond the agency, climate change, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is a key source. Yeah. Sometimes it's a bit technical, but if you're interested, this is really the agreed base for climate knowledge globally.
Which also defines the different scenarios that are...
Yeah, in this context I might also mention the European Climate and Health Observatory that I helped developing, where you can find some of this information. So yes, new diseases are spreading in Europe. Schistosomiasis, West Nile fever, tick-borne diseases are increasing, a few others, dengue fever. So we're looking at this, and I think that the last 1.5 years of the pandemic have helped to provide policy focus on the importance of health, also at the European level. I mean, health policy is with the member states, but there's I think a general recognition that Europe can help, and we see for instance, our partner agency, the European Centre for Disease Prevention Control, and in Stockholm is also increasing its work in this area.
Just to add as well that the EU's biodiversity strategy does have pathogens in there as one of the drivers for restoring and protecting nature, is to mitigate against this. We see with COVID-19, I mean, there's debates where it comes from, but it's quite clear an agriculture environment ecosystem was the driver for this happening.